Well, looking overseas, China locking down a small northwest county bordering Mongolia after it saw the most COVID-19 cases of the Delta variant. With nearly one-third of the over 150 infections over the past week, it's the current outbreak's hotspot and threatening to spiral into a nationwide surge. China reported 35 new local cases yesterday, including in Beijing. The count also includes some reclassifications of previously asymptomatic cases. With more is our China correspondent Elizabeth Law joining me from Beijing. So Liz, China reported 39 new cases yesterday, including 35 local cases. So how worrying is this emergence of new infections?
Right. I think how worrying it is, we can take an indication from what Vice Premier Sun Chunlan, who is the top official that is in charge of the COVID response in China, what she said last week during a meeting. So I quote from here, she says that the current situation now and the way it is developing seems a bit unstable, and so we're not sure. And therefore, she says more preventive measures have to be taken. And clearly over the weekend, things have really escalated because now in Beijing, as of today, there are now 15 cases in several different areas, including Fengtai and Haidian, which are kind of far away from the city center, but these are fairly affluent districts as well. And how these people got infected were because they had gone on driving holidays to nearby Inner Mongolia. And that's another focal point of the outbreak at the moment. Speaking of Inner Mongolia, they've actually put about 20,000 people under strict lockdown today. The local authorities have told the residents there that they will not be allowed to leave their homes. So that gives you an idea of the scale, once again, of this outbreak that's happening here in China.
Well, Liz, you earlier mentioned about preventive measures. So what are the authorities doing to keep the growing cases under control?
Right. This is something that we've written about many times over the past year or so. And again, China is returning to this playbook that is well tested, well tried and tested, where they take very strict, very targeted, but very muscular measures whenever there are new cases. So what's happened now is that because a focal point appears to be Inner Mongolia, which was a popular tourist hotspot. So what happens is that anyone with travel history to that place has been ordered either to do a nucleic acid test, or some have been told to isolate themselves at home. Within the area itself, in Inner Mongolia, as I mentioned earlier, residents have all been ordered to stay home in order to prevent movement of people. And of course, Beijing is now being very strict about anyone who is coming into the city from outside of Beijing. But of course, once again, I have to caveat that Beijing is being extra strict because this is the capital city after all, and we are expecting an important political meeting in about 3 weeks' time. So they are working to make sure that there are no slip-ups.
But what China is doing on a wider scale is very different to what many other countries have decided to do, that is to live with COVID-19. And I believe that, China is virtually the only country in the world sticking to a zero-tolerance strategy. Liz, can it maintain this approach, or is it contemplating also living with COVID-19?
Well, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? So last week, we wrote a story about how there are several top doctors here who are now suggesting that they may start to ease up a bit because this is going to be a prolonged battle. And the doctors, which include Dr. Zhong Nanshan, the top epidemiologist, and the head of the CDC, Dr. George Gao, who said that, in the long-term battle, this sort of lockdowns, they aren't going to work anymore because people get tired. There will still be cases that will go through the cracks. So what they have suggested is that it has to go in tandem with a strong vaccination rollout. China is now asking people to take their booster shots as well. Anyone who has had their vaccines more than 6 months ago can now go for free booster shots. And they are also suggesting that, for the sake of the economy and really in terms of the general health of the country, they need to start easing up a little bit. That being said, we are expecting a number of important events, including the Winter Olympics that will be early next year. So I don't think we're going to see easing in terms of what we're seeing in Europe, in terms of the West, and even in Singapore. I think it will be very gradual. But at the end of the day, I think the sense on the ground is that China cannot go on with this sort of strict closed-off measure for the next 2 to 5 years.